Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to quickly get this one done. So it's been very aggressively rubbed, but it's not without its problems. It's got beautiful color, but if I just take it out of the water here, you'll see just here there's a hard little shelf. It looks like something's fractured off there, which is not a huge issue. We'll just have to round it off. But the sand plug in the middle of this Belemnite is right there. So this is a fantastic piece from Jullian that he dropped by, and I've got a whole video on the other pieces, so if you want to check that out, I'll pop it up on screen and chuck it in the description. It's also got this potchy section here, which, looking at it with a light behind it, you can see that it does go a long way around, but it doesn't seem to go too deep, so there is a chance we can get rid of that. Same on this side. On this side, it seems to have been rubbed a lot less aggressively, and there's just a lot of potchy bits. This one on the top here has actually a little bit of sand over here as well, so we want to get rid of that without a question. The sand plug itself goes to a point and stops about here, so all of this we could get perfectly clean and clear, and then you'll just end up with this amazing color. There's no angle where this isn't showing color, it's just the colors that change as you're rotating it around. So lots of reds, then it flashes blues, then it flashes greens, then it goes reds again, and then teal, back to some bluey green, reds, and it just keeps on going. It's kind of like police sirens, this thing. So all we're going to do is we're going to hit it with the Nova points and focus on getting this to a bright polish, so instead of looking like this underwater, it'll look like this outside without the need of any kind of water, and hopefully reduce this potch, because the potch is detracting from what is an absolutely stunning stone. If we can get it to all look like this or this, then we are over the moon. We'll leave the sand plug in there. Jullian wants this pretty unmodified, and he likes I do agree with him, this does provide a lot of stability, even though it's not common that you want to leave sand, but this kind of stuff, it's really packed in there and it does provide a lot of stability. Otherwise you've just got this thin outer ring of opal, and especially on this side where the chip is, that will be prone to fracturing unless you cut it all the way back down to here, and then look at how much you're missing. You're missing out on all of this that you can see between my thumb and finger. So we're keeping it intact. Look at it bounce off that reflection off my finger there. That's how bright this thing is. I might have to cut with sunglasses instead of safety glasses. But we'll get this done with the Nova points and polish it up with the cerium oxide and have a beautiful finished stone to give back to Jullian. It'll give us a good preview for the next few cuts that we're going to do for him. All very similar kind of material, just with different colours. Hopefully, just as clean, but we'll soon find out. I'm working on many at a time. So on that note, let's get to working on this one. And we're off to the races. Here it is just dry. We'll have a quick look. So you can see it's really not that bright yet. It is just a rub, even though it's been rubbed quite aggressively. It's still been done with a fairly low grit. So once it's dunked in the water, you'll see that the colour returns a little bit. And we're going to use the 60 grit Green Nova. Now, I have not used this a lot, and I am starting to think that this is the ideal scenario for it. It cuts incredibly fast, but it's still soft. It's still got the tendency not to chip. I didn't find it even threaten to chip any of the areas of this opal, so there could actually be a reasonable use for this. I haven't been a huge fan of it yet, and I haven't really tried it, so we're going to keep experimenting with it. But for fossil opal, it looks like it's really good, especially for things that have been pre-rubbed, and I really don't want to take off too much more. So yeah, I tested here and just to see if it'll chip or not, and it didn't do any harm, so I think it's pretty good. I thought about changing the tip up then, but it's we'll just focus on the potchy areas first with this. I don't want to do any of the more finer tunings with this one. I think that'll go with the 280 grit. 60 is just a little bit too fast for my liking, and you can't really backtrack once you've cut it off. Quick little update, because this camera shows it off much better. If I hold it underwater here, you can see that there's still a couple areas where we're still going to work with this green, very aggressive 60 grit Nova. I don't want to use the sintered diamond because we're only taking off a tiny bit more. We're really not changing the shape much at all. We're just trying to get rid of these potchy parts. The sand parts are already basically gone. If we can clear this V of potch out, we are going to have an absolute incredible stone right here. We're not getting close to the sand core, And yeah, this V is definitely going to get reduced. There's a spot over here. It's really nice to look at it underwater like this. There's a spot just over there, really small. There's a couple up here. Unfortunately, the one on this side, on the other side, this one here, I've looked at this under a torch and it kind of wraps around and cuts all the way in. Now, it's not going to be bad enough to destabilize it because it's potch. If it was sand, we would have major concerns. But because it's potch, it's basically just a potch line that's going to exist no matter what we do. So can't really get rid of that. I can probably reduce the edges of it a little bit more, feather it out. But it's definitely going to remain. This one here is the one. This is the one. It's in a sea of red. Look at that. And this little spot here, another spot up there. All of those we're going to try to keep working on. And we'll basically get rid of them or get very close and then switch over to the 280 grit Nova. So let's keep it going. Man, oh man, Opal can drive you nuts. This is not the layup that I was expecting anymore. So this side here, we always knew that that was not going to be good. And I'll show you with the light behind it in a minute, why I knew that was not going to be good. But I thought there would be a good chance of reducing this little triangle part a lot more. Now it has come in. I have been able to take the edges in. This spot over here is basically gone. This one here is a little bit there still, and I'm a bit worried because that's the side that's closest to the sand with the chip just out of here. So that I'm going to leave now for the 280 grit. But this section here, we can't actually touch it anymore. And if you look carefully, you can see right in here, it suddenly doesn't become so potchy anymore and it actually becomes fairly loose. Now it is still a potch. It doesn't seem like it's a proper sand, but it's more of an air pocket within the common opal. And when you hit an air pocket like this on a Belemnite, just stop immediately. Just stop as soon as you notice it. Actually, on any opal, you need to stop and reassess. But in Belemnite in particular, just stop because you never know how that's attaching to the core and you never know how it's attaching to anything else. And that's what I think is happening. I think this is attached to this just here, and I'll show you why with the torch. So here we are under the light. We'll just have a quick look. So you can see here, this is what I talk about when I talk about the plug of the Belemnite. It's just that hollow core. Here you can see the side that I decided I wouldn't even try to reduce too much. And now looking at it, I reckon I can get rid of that little spot there. But you can see here that it extends deep. Like I would have to slice to get rid of that. And never slice your Belemnites. Even if it's got a bit of sand or something in it, just don't do it. This is such a nice piece. And they're all a bit like this. But you can see that it starts here and then it goes underground and it wraps all the way around. Now I thought it wouldn't extend quite as well as it has. But it's wrapped, you can see, all the way to the other side. And then we've got to here. So you can see here there's that little air pocket. Hopefully the rest of that doesn't have any air pocket in there. It looks like it's pretty solid, because otherwise you run the risk of it snapping along this fault line. But really, that's just potch. So somehow it's probably got a little bit of contamination in there when it was forming. And so it's not going to cleave at that point, but it is going to always be there. There's no way to get rid of it apart from, of course, using that as a guideline, slicing and having two smaller opals. But Belemnite, you don't slice. You just don't slice. It's too good for that. It's nice to have a little bit of a fossil. Even if it's got some imperfections in it, it's still a beautiful fossil piece. You just want to give them a light scrub and polish. So that's really what we're going to do now, because you can see that they are one and the same. So we're going to have a little triangle on that side of imperfection and a little triangle on this side. I'll try to even out the bubble, the air pocket a little bit so that it's nice and smooth. And yeah, that's about it. We'll try to get rid of some of these little spots. You can see that anything that's not attached to this, I can still have a good attempt at getting rid of, but I don't want to do this anymore with the 60. Same with this up over here, though I am worried about that one reaching the sand. So you can see here, it looks like it extends. So using something like this, a torch, and this isn't all that fancy, it's a very high powered torch and I've got it on the lower setting, but any little torch that you can get a hold of, you can really find out a lot of info. Sometimes you dig a little bit deeper and then you get more info with the torch, so definitely just keep checking with a torch when you're working on pieces like this. Especially crystal opal, it's nice and transparent, you can really like x-ray vision through. It's like a superpower, so you might as well use it. Little spot over here that I'll get rid of. So I'll mark some areas now that I want to get rid of a little bit more, but in essence we're just going to go to the 280 and start doing the final shaping. It's a fossil, you don't need to shape it too much, just scrubbing the outside surface. So anywhere where there's a bit of unevenness or a sharp edge, especially up this top end here. I'm just going to make sure that these are not jagged and nasty. 280 is going to do that, and then we're just going to flash through and get right to the cerium oxide polish. Wish me luck. I wish it turned out better. I'm a bit disappointed, but you know what? You're never guaranteed with Opal, and even though I called this one a layup, who knows, maybe the other ones that look a bit rougher will actually turn out a lot better. Either way, let's shine this one up. Here we go. Now, somehow, the video for the 280 grit Nova corrupted, so unfortunately you don't get to see all the little fine tuning that I did with that. It's where I shaped the point and everything. I don't really need to do much more. I made sure that the 280 did pretty much all the heavy lifting as I usually do. And now it's just the 600. You want to hit every surface, a little bit of fine tuning. This is really the last chance you get at changing the shape at all. But in this case, I'd already done all that work with the 280. It's just very unfortunate that the footage killed itself for some reason. Very strange to happen. It's only happened once or twice in the filming with this channel, but it's happened again, so very unlucky. Now, just going up and down, you saw that originally I was going around and then I'm going up and down. It's good to change direction because then you can track where your scratches are coming from. So I always advise to do it in one direction, dry it, check it out, do it in the other direction, check it out again, and make sure your scratches are the right depth. So then we're off to the 1200. 1200 I started polishing up the little sand plug. It's fairly soft, not too soft, but fairly soft. So kind of like Boulder Opal, you can actually get a bit of a polish with just the Nova points up to 3000. If I wanted to, I could have gone a bit higher now that I have the full range of Novas, but I didn't go that far with this one. I just want to flatten it out and polish it up just a little bit more. Hopefully the plane that just flew overhead is not too loud in this recording. But you can see just hitting all the same areas again, making sure the most important part of this entire fossil is the point. So I want that nice and perfect, nice and shaped, and of course, definitely polished. So the 3000, I focus on the sand plug a little bit with the 3000 just because it's the last chance that I'm going to get to polish it. The cerium oxide and felt really is not going to do much, but I'm also hoping that it doesn't get trapped in there too much either at this point. So the less rough it is, the more chance I've got of not making a mess of it with the cerium oxide. And you can see that the color is really starting to leap out now, even with this pretty dodgy camera compared to my other one. It always looks much better on the other camera. So we'll see it in its final glory very soon. And you can see here, just going over it all, hitting that potchy area, just trying to see how well the potch will also polish as well. But there's a little bit of sand in that potch and that makes it really not want to take a polish at all. But no matter what, we're going to give it a full-on cerium oxide workover, and it just keeps it looking like this even when it's dry, which is fantastic. You can see that I'm constantly dunking, especially when you've got any kind of porousness or any imperfections. You don't want to let the burr dry too much. If it dries, what you can do is you can end up packing cerium oxide into any of those imperfections, like the sand plug at the bottom or the little airy pocket in the actual opal itself. So you're constantly dunking, you're constantly dipping, constantly keeping it wet, but you don't want to dip it into the water and you don't want to dip the stone into the water either. You want to keep it wet without dipping it in there because then you're starting to remove the cerium oxide that you've put on the surface. So always just keep dunking your felt tip. Don't let it get dry and keep rehydrating the whole thing just using the felt burr. You can see there I get pretty close to dropping it in the water a few times there. But that's just due to the space limitations I've got while trying to film. You really don't need the water there too much at all. It's just nice to have it there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are done. Now I'm going to polish it up a little bit more off camera. I found some spots I don't really like. But I really do need to get this video recorded and starting to get processed, so we are going to record as is. And you can see, I mean, you're not going to notice from this camera shot where the areas are that I want to hit over again. Maybe you will, but you'd have to have really good eyes because this is a beautiful piece. Absolutely stunning. So you can see here, there's that back part that we couldn't get rid of. Unfortunate. The front part that was always there that we knew we couldn't get rid of from the start. I was just more hopeful with the other side. But unfortunately, it's going to have to stay as well. And then there's the sand plug. sand plug end. It's actually got some bits of color in it, so a little bit of scattered opal throughout there, kind of like a matrixy effect. And the point, which I spent quite a bit of time just getting right with the 280 grit, just to make it a nice shape. It was okay at the start when it was rubbed, but I found that one side was a bit flat and it was a bit off-centered and all that kind of stuff. So we've just neatened it up a bit. And this is an absolute beautiful opal. I've seen the Virgin Rainbow in person. Haven't handled it, but have seen it. And I mean, in terms of brightness, this is going to trade blows with it right up there. It's just a lot smaller. So this is only about an inch or 2.5 centimeters long. We might give it a quick weigh. I would say that it's somewhere between, I mean, I should know, I've been handling it for quite some time now, somewhere between 7 and 8, probably about 7.5 carats. And, alright, just under 7.5 carats, not bad. Not bad at all, a good chunk of Belemnite, and of course, because it's the tip end is always the most desirable. It's much better than just having a tube of opal, because that could form in other ways. But when you've got that defined shape, you really know what it is. Anyone that's seen one before knows exactly what they're looking at. And this one's got every color under the sun. It's got an interesting pattern. It's a bit blockier at the front, and then on the back side, if we can call it that, it's a little bit more dominated by rolling colors, depending on which angle you're coming from. And of course, wherever there's color, it's just foil quality. It's absolutely stunning. The chip area here, I've kept a bit undulating, just because I would have had to take it right down and get really close to that sand core. It's already nearly starting to be revealed. So with this amount of color, you actually don't see the sand plug. So if I hold it like this, you wouldn't know that this has actually got the sand going right up to here. But yeah, all in all, almost the perfect piece. Incredible color. Jullian's gonna love it. And I'm sure whoever he sells it to, because he's the selling kind of man. I don't know if he's gonna hoard this one for himself, but I'm sure if he finds the right buyer, he'll sell it to them and they'll also be incredibly happy. So that's that. One down. I think there were 5 more to go. I've already started 2 others. Definitely stay tuned to the channel and you'll see plenty more where this one came from. Hopefully even better than this one. One that I've been playing with already seems to be a little bit cleaner than this one with the two triangles. So yeah, I'll definitely see you in the next one.